In this video, we will look at some examples of calculating either a principal, a rate, or a time in the context of simple interest, and we'll also talk about discounted loans. So let's look at an example where we're asked to find the principal. Phillips Health and Beauty Spa is replacing one of its workstations. The interest on a loan secured by the spa was $93.50. The money was borrowed at 5.5% simple interest for 2 years. Find the principal. Okay, so first we need an equation to work with. And since this is simple interest, that clues us in as to an equation we could use. And we need to make sure that it also includes the variable that represents the thing we're trying to find. Alright, so simple interest is I equals PRT, and it does have the P in there, which represents principal, and that's the thing that we need to find. Alright, so we need a quick review of algebra in order to figure out how to solve for principal. Alright, so in algebra terms, we might say we're trying to isolate that variable P or get P by itself. Okay, and so what we have is, principals multiplied by rate and by time, and we just want to know what the principal is, not what it is times rate and times time. So if I divide by rate and time, that's going to get rid of those and tell me just what principal alone is. Okay, now using an algebraic way to write this, if I draw a line under it, you may remember that that represents division, and then underneath I could write the two things that I'm dividing by, the rate and the time. Okay, so what that does, rate divided by rate, okay, if you try that out, that's going to be 1. Okay, so that's gone. Time divided by time, okay, gets rid of that, and that would tell me that principal is the interest divided by the rate and also divided by time. Okay, so you can take your pick. Sometimes we do the algebra on the equation first and then plug in the numbers, or you could also choose to fill in the numbers first and then start dividing. Alright, so I'll show you that way as well. Okay, so let's set up this equation. I equals PRT. Alright, so this time I do know the interest. The interest on a loan secured by the spa was $93.50. Okay, so I'm going to replace I with that. I don't know principal, that's what I'm trying to find. And then I should know rate and time. There should be only one thing that I need to find. Alright, so rate is 5.5%, and as a decimal that would be 0.055. Okay, now that is annually, so I need years for the time, and I have that, 2 years. Okay, now you could choose to divide right now, or some people like to simplify and just do this multiplication. So let's do that. Okay, and 0.055 times 2 is 0.11. Alright, and so then to find the principal, we need to divide by 0.11. Okay, so in a calculator, you would want to do 93.50 and then divide that by 0.11. And let me do that real quick, and that's 850. So the principal is $850. Now let's pause and make sure that that makes sense in the context of the problem. Now if the interest is $93.50, interest is never more than the principal in realistic situations because they're just charging you a fraction or a percentage of the amount that was borrowed. They're not going to make you pay more than 100% for examples like this. Alright, so we need something that's larger than $93.50, and then just see if it seems reasonable. If it was, if the principal was, let's say like $100,000, and 5.5% is a good chunk of that money, right? Times 2 for the 2 years. So you wouldn't expect to have such a small interest fee like $93.50 if you borrowed a really large amount of money. Okay. Now another thing you can do is just go through and calculate if you work out PRT, make sure you still get the interest that was given. That's another way to check. So 850 times 0.055 times 2, make sure that that does equal 9350. All right, how about calculating an interest rate? R&S Furnace Company invested $15,250 for 10 years and received $9,150 in simple interest. What was the rate that the investment paid? Okay, so you may want to even take a guess at this before you begin. Look at the amount that they invested. This is the principal. All right, look at how much they're getting. This is the interest that they've earned. Okay, and then that's the interest over 10 years. So they're getting about $1,000 each year in simple interest. All right, and then see, $1,000 compared to $15,000, and take a guess as to what rate you think that they earned. All right, so let's actually make that calculation and figure it out. Okay, so we know that this is simple interest, so again, we'll start with I equals PRT and fill in what we know. So $9,150 is the interest. Okay, the principal is the starting amount. Okay, that's the amount they invested, $15,250. The rate, that's the question. We don't know that. So we'll leave that as a variable, R. And then we have a time period, 10 years. Okay, so notice now when we solve, this is going to be an annual rate because we have time in years. Okay. So one thing we could do now, we could multiply 15,250 times 10 first, or I could just start by dividing to try to figure out this rate. All right. So the rate is combined with those two other numbers, so I want to get rid of those. So I want to divide by 15,250 and also divide by 10 to see what just the rate is. Okay, so let's talk about how you entered this in your calculator. Now if you just type 9150 divided by 15,250 times 10, okay, your calculator actually thinks that it's only dividing by 15,250, and then it thinks that this 10 is in the numerator. So to avoid that, you have two choices. You can either put parentheses around these two numbers, and that tells the calculator, okay, I'm going to divide by both of those two things. Or your other option is to use a division symbol here, okay, and in the calculator that's saying take the 9,150, divide it by 15,250, and then also divide it by 10. So those are your two options. Basically, anytime you have more than one thing in the denominator, I like to put parentheses around it, and that way you're not trying to remember which sign to change it to. Okay, so I would leave this as multiplication, and my preference would be to just put in an extra parentheses. Okay, so go ahead and make that calculation, and we can round if we need to, so we end up with a rate. Okay, that's 0.06, and then we would just convert that back to a percentage. So it'll give you a decimal, but write it as a percent. So this is a 6% rate, and it's assumed that this is an annual rate. All right, how about an example of calculating the term of a loan? Okay, the time period. Judy and Laura borrowed $4,500 at 8 3/4% to put in a hot tub. They had to pay $2,756.25 in interest. That's quite a bit. Find the term of the loan and the monthly payment. Okay, so we'll start with I equals PRT. All right. And your textbook didn't specify simple interest, but they probably should have. We're just going to assume that it is since it's in the simple interest section, but really that should be specified. Okay, so we know the interest, $27.5625. We know the principal. They borrowed $4,500. All All right, we do know the rate, 8 3/4%. In a calculator, you can convert that to a decimal if you like, right? Or you may know the decimal for it already. But if you do 8 plus 3 divided by 4, okay, that's one way to make the conversion. Okay, there are different ways to do it. So that's going to be 8.75%, and then as a decimal, that would be 0.0875. Okay, and then the term of the loan, that's what we don't know. So this is times t. All right, so same thing, we could multiply these two and then divide, or I could just right away divide by 4,500 and 0.0875. All right. And that gives that t equals 7. And when you divide that, and notice that this was an annual interest rate, so we can assume that the time is in years as well. So this is 7 years. All right, so that's the first part of the problem. The second is to find the monthly payment. So first we need to figure out the amount that they owe, all right, the future value. So we're using that little formula that the monthly payment is the amount that they owe divided by t, where t is in months. Okay, so splitting up the total amount they owe, dividing that evenly among all of the months in the time period. All right, so we know that they borrowed $4,500, and then they also had to pay this amount in interest. So future value is principal plus interest, or 4,500 plus 2756.25. All right, so the total amount that they owe is 7,256.25. Okay, so then the monthly payment is that amount divided by the number of months. All right, well, we know that t is 7 years. T is 7 years. How many months is that? Well, times 12, that would be 84 months. Okay, so divide by 84, and each month they owe $86.38. Okay, hopefully the hot tub was worth it. That's quite an amount to pay for 7 years for a hot tub.